Kyle, Karen, thank you both for doing this. This is the very first of a thing we're calling VCP Stories. It's an opportunity for people to learn more about the residents in the village and about their experiences. And I was thinking about where we should start. And one of the first questions that people always ask me when they find out the kind of work that we do at VCP is they ask, how does a veteran become homeless in the first place? And one thing that I've learned in the last year of working there is that usually it's not all at once. I mean, usually there's a journey that takes place. And I just thought we could start with the two of you sort of briefly sharing your journey with us. So let's start with Karen. Would you just kind of tell us about, what went on in your life that led you to eventually coming to VCP?
Yes, sir. My name is Karen Carter, and about 6 years ago, I became homeless. I filed for divorce, and my husband wouldn't leave the home, so I ended up losing the home. And I don't have any family here in Missouri. I'm from North Carolina. All my family is there, so I just ended up with no place to stay.
Yeah, but it wasn't like all at once, right? I mean,
No,
there was a
sir. It
yeah.
wasn't
Tell
all.
us. I know a little of that story, but I want everybody else to know it. So feel free to tell us some of the details, if you would.
The details were that I had left town after the divorce, and when I came back, they were uh, people had moved in my home, and I had to take them to court to get them out of my home to get possession of my house. By the time I had done that, the bank had taken over the house, and I went by the house, and everything of mine was set outside on the sidewalk.
And then, if I recall correctly, weren't you were sort of on your last leg in hotels when you came
Yes,
to VCP?
yes, sir. I was living out of my car. And then when I became a disabled veteran, I began to get my money for being a disabled veteran. Then I moved into a hotel. And that's just became my life, just living in and out of a hotel because there was no way I could get up first month's rent or last month's rent. And not only that, when you're living in a hotel, you don't have a stove or refrigerator, so you have to eat by the day. So that was taking a lot of my money. So I just felt like I was between a rock and a hard place. I was just there, I was surviving, but I wasn't living.
And then you're a Coast Guard veteran, right?
Sir, I
Yeah.
was in the
So,
United States Coast Guard.
and so we sort of have everybody represented at VCP. So from a Coastie in Karen to Army in Kyle. Kyle, tell us your story real quick, if you would, or not real
Sure.
quick, however.
Well, I was, I actually I was in a pretty good place for a long time. Married. Uh, Actually, what kind of started the spiral for me was my wife and I actually had a miscarriage, and that got her kind of to second guess um, where her goals in life were. Kids were kind of out of the question. It was too hard for her. Um, so it kind of put a lot of pressure on our relationship. And I was struggling with PTSD. I had a lot of anger issues, depression and anxiety, and it was all starting to weigh on an already fragile relationship. And when we finally decided that, well, when she finally decided that we were going to end things, it hit me pretty hard. I already had a very difficult time sleeping. Sleep has always been a struggle of mine. So, I'm working, but you go a couple days without sleep and you start to show up to work late. And I started showing up to work late, and, as you would assume, it led to me losing my job. Um, I was not prepared for how difficult it was going to be to find another job. Um, I burned through my savings. I burned through the money that we made off selling our house, and with still having no prospects of jobs, I was really, I had no place to go, so I just kind of started, jumping from, I traveled when I still had money to see old friends, and I just burning through those savings while I was looking for jobs. I went to Washington State to see an old medic of mine and tried getting jobs out there. I went to Colorado, tried getting jobs out there, back to Kansas City, and it just wasn't panning out. It got to the point where I was, I applied for school to just be. I couldn't focus on it, but I didn't have another way of making money, so I had to use the BAH just to survive. And so I just kind of, found myself in a hard place, trying to figure out where to go. And I mean, luckily, it was truly lucky that I happened upon the VCP. I just happened to run into somebody that works for Sharice Davids, and he helped put me in line to get my Purple Heart after 7 years, from when I was wounded. And being there introduced me to a bunch of other veterans of all different organizations, and one of them happened to be your organization, and that's how I finally found a place. And it's allowed me to kind of, with not looking for work, it's allowed me to kind of hit the VA hard and try to get my life on track. So I mean, and that's where I currently am. So my story.
Yeah, you're both residents of the village. We're glad both of you are with us. Karen, if I remember right, were you referred over by the VA? Was that how we got to know you?
Yes, sir. I was getting up every Thursday morning, going down to the VA for their HUD. They have a HUD association, a HUD office down there. And I was going down to the HUD office. And I guess I was worrying those people, and they said, we can't help you. Go down to the Veterans Community Project.
Hmm.
And I did. I went to the Veterans Community Project, and they said, we put in veterans in tiny houses in 2 weeks, and we'll put you in one. And I don't know what, I went back to the hotel and packed up, but I was so excited. I just went back to the hotel and get ready to go.
Do you remember your first day, like seeing your tiny house?
Yes, I do. Yes, sir, I do. It was almost like a dream. I didn't know what to expect, and I just didn't know. And then when I saw the house from the outside, it didn't look like a whole lot. But when I went inside, it was a home, and it's a nice home. And it had a stove, and it had a refrigerator. And that's what I needed, a stove and a refrigerator in my life.
In fact, you're
Love
you're
tiny
in
home.
you're I was going to say you're in one of the family units because I've seen your grandson there so
Yes,
much, right?
sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. The tiny house got a little crowded with just me and the grandson, so we moved to a family unit. And that was just so wonderful the way the Veterans Community Project did that. We had room, and it was nice to accommodate my grandson.
I remember a year ago, when I first came to work at VCP, people would talk about you. They'd say, "Oh, Karen, she's basically the mayor of the village. Like she's pretty much in charge," and that was apparent really quickly. And it's funny how the place sort of falls into like this natural chain of command hierarchy. It's a village full of veterans. And then Kyle, I remember, I think we met within 2 or 3 days of when you first moved in, which was pretty recently. How I know you came over through Congresswoman David's office in a way, but were there programs and that sort of thing that you had tried before VCP that were veteran specific?
I had tried, really what my goal was after I was was kind of out of work. My goal was to work on my disability, and what I had tried doing was going through the Veterans of Foreign Wars. I reached out to several of the organizations, even a couple senators and congressmen, to no avail for the most part. It was yeah, that was pretty much it. I mean, it was me working on my disability. Without work, it was apparent to me that I could kill two birds with trying to help myself by getting into the VA and seeking therapy and help, and also using that in a way to raise my benefits and be able to have that safety net of that disability check, which as since I've been here for 3-4 months now, I've had my first month now where I haven't gone in the red in my bank account. So I think
Congratulations.
yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah, no, I'm very excited about that. That's it's been a nice change of pace.
So talk a little about that, either one of you, about, because I know that's sort of like training in financial management. That's a big part of the case management program. So for either of you, can you talk a little bit about just how the case managers have helped you prepare for the next phase, which is, moving out, transitioning out?
Well, I wasn't a good steward of my money. I was married for about 20 years, and he took care of a lot of things. And I didn't realize how much he took care of until after the divorce. So I wasn't used to saving. I wasn't even used to paying bills. And so coming to the Veterans Community Project, and I'm going through their financial classes, I'm learning how to save money. I'm learning how to handle my money. And oh my God, money has last till the end of the month. It don't last till the end of the month, but it's lasting now to the end of the month. So I'm learning how to handle my money, and I'm learning not to be so fearful, because now that I'm by myself and I'm on my own, I'm kind of getting a little fearful. Am I going to be able to do this? Am I going to be able to handle this by myself? But going through the program and with the support I have, I feel that I'm going to be able to handle my house payments and whatever else financially comes up.
Yeah, you're about to move into your own house.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Yes,
I
sir.
mean, it's a pretty big victory.
Yes, sir. And I'm going to need that financial stability too. And I'm going to need the financial where all and where no and all that to help me on this
uh
journey. But I feel
Yeah,
confident. I feel confident, like I'm going to make it.
yeah, you should be. You will. You
Yes.
will. I have no doubt. Kyle, for you, it's been 4 months. I mean, obviously the house, like having, a place to live where you're not couch surfing, not calling on people you served with, not exhausting your network of support of friends and everything all the time. That I know is a game changer. But on top of that, talk a little bit about, just from the case management approach that's taken at VCP, what has made the biggest difference for you in terms of that?
Oh well, I mean, just jumping right off the bat, the money situation. I mean, Wes, my case manager, I mean, he's gone to every length to help me so far. Even went as far to call a company that had been charging me for years that I was unable to get out of the contract. We spent 2 hours on the phone with them, just he and I sitting in the room, just to get a $50 a month charge off of my account. And doing that, these little teeny things like that have been able to reduce my fiscal liability to where I no longer, I have probably $300, $400 off of my monthly payment now. That is all being able to be put towards something else. And like I said, I mean, I'm no longer in the red, you know. I like Karen. I made it a whole month, and still had some money in the bank. So that right there was pretty incredible. It's a crazy feeling. It's a feeling I never expected myself to feel that victory coming from just worrying about having money all the way to the end of the month, and am I going to be able to have food and all of that, and like just being able to tout that victory has been pretty amazing. So
one of the things that I always think about when I talk to residents of the village is like whether the time when you separated from the service was recent, it's relatively recent for you, Kyle, or not so recent with you, Karen. I always feel like that transition and the difficulty of that transition is in many ways just as difficult as the transition from being homeless to being independent and housed and to living on your own, in the sense that when you're in the service, everything you need is like in one place, like where you get your haircut, where you get your dental work, and where you go to make sure you're getting your paycheck are like next door to each other. And so for either of you, if you could just talk about like the difficulty of making that transition and why the transitional approach of VC, because it's not like VCP is giving you food, either of you. It's not like VCP is giving you money. You're not doing any of those things, but they're transitioning you to the next step. So can you just kind of talk about the role that plays and why that's been important?
Well, I like to say in my situation, I do agree with you. When you're in the military does a whole lot of things for you. You don't have to know how to do a resume. You don't have to balance your checking account. There's a lot of things. There's a lot of people in the military who don't even step foot in a store because the military feeds you. And so people don't understand there's a lot of things, a lot of life skills that you don't learn when you get into the military because the military is there. They're that cushion for you. And when you get out of the military, you have to learn things that you didn't learn, things that my cousins and all my other classmates, they went on to learn how to do a resume. They learned how to hunt for a house, buy a house, or hunt for an apartment. We didn't get those life skills when we joined the military. That was already set up for us, so we didn't have to go apartment hunting. So when you get out of the military and it's time for you to go apartment hunting, okay, you don't have those skills. You don't have a lot of the skills that a lot of your classmates and your cousins and family went on, because in the military, you made an oath to protect our country. And that was what was on our mind, not balancing a checkbook, not doing a resume, is being there for our country. And so we don't have a lot of the life skills, even communication. When you're in the military, all you say is, sir, yes, sir. So when you get out, where's your communication skills? You are missing a lot of skills that you would have not had if you not had went into the military. But because we chose the military, we missed out on a lot of life skills. And it's nice to be in a place with an organization that is helping me with these skills. I didn't come to VCP to stay. I came to VCP for 4 months to get first and last month's rent and move on. But VCP wanted so much more from me. And I hung around and I went to the classes, I went to the counseling, I did all of that. And now I feel like that I can make it out here by myself. But when you're in the military, you don't have a lot of life skills that a lot of people have.
It's a great point, and it's interesting because it's, on the one hand, you miss out on the skills of how to navigate civilian life while you're in the military, or many of them. But on the other hand, you gain all these other skills that people in civilian life don't get, right? I mean, like you end up with poise and the ability to, come back from adversity, and leadership, and Kyle, you were a sniper in Afghanistan, right, for the Army?
Mm-hmm.
So, obviously, what life throws at you on a day-to-day basis, while it could be very difficult, just like Karen knows, like, I know I've done tough stuff, right? And so
to run with that, if I may,
please.
it was one of the things that I love. It's kind of a saying that like Wes would tell me, and it's that you've done tough things. Like like, remember, you are a pretty awesome person. Like, we forget that. I mean, it's pretty easy to forget that because you go through so many hard times and it feels like you're failing at things when things are going this poorly. And it gets to the point that you think, oh, you know, I must have done something. I must be doing something wrong. You know, I'm not very good at this. I can't do this civilian thing, you know. And then, you know, Wes will come up to you and tell you, hey, you've done some amazing things, like incredible things that no, you know, like some people can't even fathom. So, you know, remember that you're capable of such things, and remember that you can, you know, you can do a lot more than you give yourself credit for. And it does, just honestly, just having that mindset puts you in a place where you can finally start to achieve, you know, these small little victories that you didn't think that you were even capable of, you know. So it puts you in a position to where you can, you know, feel like you can do it yourself, you know.
Mhm.
And that's the cool part, because like you said, they're not giving, you know, they're not giving me a, you know, they're not giving me a paycheck to be here. They're not giving me, you know, food to be here and stuff like that, but they're putting me in a position where I realize that I can do it myself, where I can, you know, I know that I can accomplish these things. And, you know, every little thing that you need along the way, you know, whatever you struggle with, you know, it used to be as easy as, hey, I wasn't getting paid. I put a pay inquiry in, you know, and I give it to my leadership and they pass it, and I forget about it. And then a week later, I've got my pay fixed. It's that was as simple as it was. I didn't have to call 6 different people and sit on the phone for hours at a time. And, you know, I had no idea it was going to be that fun. But yeah, so all these little things, they've helped me navigate. And now I feel more confident. I used to be terrified to be on the phone. I don't, it was the weirdest thing to be anxious about, but just being on the phone and knowing that it was going to be an uphill battle for an hour at a time, with dealing with people that don't really want to help you, for the most part. You know, but I feel a lot more confident doing things like that nowadays. And it shows too, because I'm steadily, you know, things are trending upwards. So yeah.
How
And
much
that's
of a difference?
the,
Oh, go
excuse
ahead,
me,
Karen.
the good thing about the Veterans Community Project. It reminds all of us who we are. You know, when we come to the Veterans Community Project, when I came, I was at a standstill. There was a brick wall in front of me and a brick wall behind me. I had forgotten how to walk. And that's the thing about Veterans Community Project. They'll make you go inside and remember who you were. They'll make you remember, hey, I can do this. You know, sometimes when you're sitting on the sideline and you're homeless and the world passing you by, you forget. You forget who you are. You forget that I can do this. You forget what you learned, what you taught. But when I came to the Veterans Community Project, they reminded me that's not who you are. That's not who you were. And that's not who you need to be today. And I'm so glad that I'm not the person that I was when I walked in the village. I'm a totally different person today than I was in the day I walked into the tiny home. And I'm glad that Veterans Community Project helped me to be somebody who is better than I was when I came here.
It's perfectly said. It's funny because, you know, a big part of what I do is I end up giving, and you all have seen me do this a bunch. I end up giving a lot of tours of the village, either to elected officials or to donors to the organization, that kind of thing. And we'll typically walk into one of the tiny houses, and you know, they're not what people expect, as you know. They're really nice inside, and it's always funny when people will say, they'll always, frequently they'll say the same thing, which is they'll say, wow, I can't imagine going from being homeless to living in here. And what I always tell them is, I say, you know, the reason this place works is we don't think about it that way. We don't think about what would be uh, fitting for a person who was homeless, what would be enough for a person who was homeless. We think of everything we do for the residents of the village, for the people we see at the outreach center, for every veteran we serve, as what do people who serve their country deserve? What did they earn? And I think and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think one of the things that separates VCP so much is from the moment you show up, nobody treats you like you're homeless. Nobody treats you like you have a handout or a charity case. You are treated like as if you stepped out of the military yesterday.
Yeah, I just feel like we're treated like neighbors, you know?
Yes.
Yeah, like as soon as I get here, I mean, I just immediately like, goodness, when I met Karen, it's literally like, hey neighbor, you know? I mean, we're just, yeah.
And that's the way the Veterans Community Project is. When you come here, it's not like, uh, here's our hand, let us help you. What do you need us to do? Let us help you. And that's wonderful to come to a place where they want to help you. They don't just say it, they actually want to help you. And Kyle and I, even though we live several houses away, we still just like next door neighbors. And then when I see him outside, I always wave. I enjoy his dog. I'm scared of him, but I enjoy it.
It's a big dog.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, moving in. I mean, goodness. I mean, the biggest thing that's gone unsaid so far is that we're all veterans. We all have like almost the same story, years in between, but it's all like we may not have done the same thing in the service, you know? I mean, our services were all wildly different, but we all have, you know, so many similarities. You know, we all dealt with so many of the same things. So we all have this level that we just jump to. We're already here of knowing each other, you know? So it kind of just jumps into that, you know, hey neighbor, you know? Like
Sisterhood, the brotherhood and sisterhood.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's right on. I mean, that's the way I feel about working there, right? I mean, like the whole leadership, we're all combat vets. I mean, we just basically sit around and say mean things to each other because that's how we show affection. And it's like being in the barracks. And so you know, it's funny how so many of us. I mean, even Wes, who you were talking about, your case manager. I mean, as you know, he was a Navy corpsman in Iraq. I mean, it so much of the community. It's not just the people who live in a tiny house. I mean, the I mean, I think the community is everybody who's involved with it, and that's why it works. Before we wrap this up, either of you can start. What are you most excited about in your life right now? Karen, why don't you go first?
Well, during the quarantine, I've started a couple of art projects and I'm very excited about them. But I'll be most excited in a couple of weeks when I move out of the tiny home into my own home. I'll be a new homeowner. And that just keeps me on edge and I just can't wait. That's what I'm looking forward to.
It's
And
great.
letting another veteran have my tiny home.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm most excited about, I mean, just gaining some financial stability. You know, like stability is just something I've lacked for a long time, and getting to a place, and I see it happening, you know, as we speak, you know, where I'm less and less worried about where, you know, where that next where my next, you know, meal is coming from or anything like that, you know. I just and I just see that, you know, with this, I don't have that liability of having a house payment or something like that, and I'm able to work towards, you know, without um, all this other stuff to worry about. I can kind of get closer and closer to being where Karen's at, you know, and get into that place where I can comfortably get a place of my own. And honestly, one of the things, and I've felt this way for a long time, and it's only solidified it, but I love helping others, especially veterans, and just seeing it in action here. I mean, it's kind of what I've realized I want to do with my life. So I'd love to get someplace one day where I can be in your all's shoes and helping a guy that's, you know, gonna be in my shoes. And I just hope that I'm able to do half as much as y'all have done for me. So
Well, I think you will, and I really appreciate both of you doing this. I think it's a very successful first VCP stories. Thanks a lot. Thanks for doing this, y'all.
You're welcome. Have a wonderful day.
All right. I'll talk to you both later. I'll see you around. Thank you. All right.
Take care.
See ya. All right.